I went for a solo hike last weekend in one of those quiet state parks about an hour from town. It's the kind of place I like, not too crowded, with trails that wind through thick woods and hardly any people around. I had been walking for over an hour without seeing another soul, which was exactly what I wanted. The sun was high, filtering through the trees in soft patches, and everything felt peaceful and ordinary. My boots made that familiar crunch on the dirt path, and I was just enjoying the rhythm of it all. That's when I caught something in the corner of my eye. At first I didn't think much of it, just a shape off to the side of the trail, maybe 10 or 15 feet into the trees. My brain tried to fill in the blanks the way it always does. Probably a tree stump, or a shadow, or someone who had stepped off to rest. I kept walking for a couple more steps before the wrongness of it started to register. It was too straight, too narrow, not quite like anything that belonged there. I slowed down without really deciding to. My footsteps got quieter as I turned my head to look properly. It was a person. They were standing just behind a thick tree trunk, so I could only see part of them. One shoulder, part of the torso, and the side of their head. They weren't moving at all, not shifting their weight, not looking around, not doing any of the small things people do when they stop in the woods. Just completely still. I stopped walking too. For a few seconds I just stood there on the trail, trying to make sense of it. It didn't feel dangerous right away. People step off trails all the time. Maybe they were watching birds or taking a break or something. But the longer I looked, the more off it felt. I waited, hoping they would notice me and do something normal. They didn't. No turn of the head, no change in posture, nothing. They stayed exactly as they were, half hidden by that tree. The quiet started to feel heavier. The usual little sounds of the forest seemed to pull back, like someone had turned down the volume. No wind in the leaves, no distant birds, just the soft sound of my own breathing. I took a few slow steps forward along the trail, keeping my eyes on them. As the angle changed, I could see a bit more. They were standing perfectly upright, arms hanging straight down at their sides. Too straight, not relaxed at all. It reminded me of those old store mannequins, the kind that look almost real but never quite right. Their head was angled slightly in my direction, even though the tree still blocked most of their face. It gave the strong feeling that they were looking straight at me, even though nothing had moved, not even a little. That was when the unease really settled in. People don't stand like that. Even when you're resting, your body makes tiny adjustments. You breathe, you sway just a bit, your shoulders rise and fall. This person looked like they had been placed there and told not to move, like a shape someone had set up in the woods rather than an actual living person. I decided it was time to keep going, not in a rush, just steady. I turned my eyes back to the trail ahead and continued walking at my normal pace, trying not to make it obvious that I was uncomfortable. But every part of me was still aware of that spot behind me. I could feel the weight of it, like something was fixed on my back, watching without blinking. After about a minute, I started feeling silly. It was probably just someone who wanted to be left alone, or maybe they hadn't heard me at all. The woods can swallow sound in strange ways sometimes. I slowed my steps and told myself to stop being paranoid. Then I looked back. The spot was empty. The tree trunk was there, exactly as before, but there was no one behind it. No figure stepping deeper into the woods, no movement between the trees. The ground around it looked undisturbed, dry leaves and twigs still in place. There wasn't enough thick cover nearby for someone to disappear that fast, without making any noise at all. I stood completely still and stared, scanning the area slowly. Nothing. No rustle of branches, no sound of footsteps fading away. The forest had gone back to its normal quiet sounds, a light breeze moving through the leaves higher up, a few insects humming in the distance, but nothing close by, nothing that explained where the person had gone. It didn't add up. Even if they had started moving the second I turned my head, I should have heard something, a branch snapping, leaves crunching, anything. The ground wasn't soft enough to hide every sound, yet there was complete silence from that direction. I stayed there for a long moment, heart beating harder than I wanted to admit, trying to convince myself I had imagined the whole thing. But I knew what I had seen. The rigid posture, the way they hadn't reacted, the feeling of being studied from behind a tree, it all sat wrong in my stomach. Eventually, I turned around and started walking again, faster this time. I kept checking over my shoulder every few seconds, half expecting to see that same figure standing there again, maybe a little closer to the trail now. But the path stayed empty behind me. The rest of the hike felt different. Every shadow between the trees caught my attention. Every small movement in the underbrush made me tense up. I didn't relax until I reached the parking lot and saw my car waiting there, sunlight reflecting off the windshield like nothing strange had happened at all. I still don't know what I saw that day. Maybe it was just a person who was really good at staying still. Maybe my mind played tricks on me in the quiet of the woods. But that empty spot where they had been standing keeps coming back to me. The way they were positioned so perfectly, like they were waiting for something. Like they had been placed there on purpose. I haven't gone back to that trail since. I keep telling myself it was nothing. But part of me wonders what would have happened if I had walked closer instead of turning away. I'm not sure I want to find out. I went for a solo hike in a small state park last fall, the kind of place hardly anyone talks about. It was just a long loop trail through thick woods, nothing special. But that was exactly what I wanted. A night by myself with my tent, no crowds, no noise from the road. I parked at the trailhead around noon, threw on my pack, and started walking. The first 2 hours felt perfect. The sun filtered through the leaves in those nice, shifting patterns. Birds called back and forth overhead. Insects hummed in the background, the way they always do. Leaves rustled whenever a breeze came through. I even smiled to myself a couple times, thinking how lucky I was to have the whole place to myself. The trail was easy to follow, mostly flat, with a few gentle hills, and my boots made that soft, crunching sound on the dirt and dried leaves. Everything felt right. Then, the sound started to fade. At first, I barely noticed. The steady buzz of insects just got quieter, like someone slowly turning down a volume knob. I kept walking, but after a while, I realized I couldn't hear them at all anymore. No crickets, no flies, nothing. A minute or two later, the birds went silent too. Not one by one, but all at once, like they'd all decided to stop at the exact same second. I slowed my steps without meaning to. My own footfalls suddenly sounded too loud in the empty air. I told myself it was probably nothing, maybe a hawk or coyote nearby, making everything hide. That happened sometimes in the woods. Still, something felt wrong in my stomach. I kept going anyway. A little farther down the trail, the wind died completely. The trees went totally still. No branches moving, no leaves whispering against each other. It was like the whole forest had been frozen in place. I stopped walking right in the middle of the path and just stood there, listening as hard as I could. There was nothing. No birds, no insects, no wind, not even the distant sound of a plane or anything from the outside world. Just dead silence and the faint ringing in my own ears. I looked around slowly. The trail ahead looked normal. Trees crowded close on both sides, thick enough that you couldn't see more than 30 or 40 feet into them. Behind me, the path curved back the way I'd come. Everything looked exactly the same as it had 10 minutes earlier, but it didn't feel the same. That was when the feeling hit me, deep in my chest, like a cold weight. The sudden, heavy sense that I was no longer alone. I tried to shake it off, told myself my brain was just overreacting to the quiet. When everything goes silent like that, your mind starts inventing things to fill the space. I took a slow breath and started walking again, but I kept my steps careful and quiet. Every crunch of my boots seemed to echo way too far. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Then I saw it, off to the right, maybe 25 feet into the trees. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, some shadow cast by the canopy. But shadows don't move on their own. This thing shifted, slow and careful, like it was adjusting its weight from one foot to the other. I couldn't make out any clear shape. Every time I tried to focus on it, the edges seemed to blur or slide just enough that my eyes couldn't lock on. It stayed half hidden between the trunks, dark and tall, watching. I felt my skin pulled tight across my shoulders. My mouth went dry. I took one small step backward on the trail. Whatever was out there moved at the same time, matching my step exactly, keeping the same distance, not coming closer, just mirroring me. That was all I needed. I turned around and started walking back the way I had come. Not running yet, but moving fast. I kept my eyes forward, even though every nerve in my body wanted to look over my shoulder. The silence stayed wrapped around me like a blanket. My breathing sounded ragged and too loud. Every single footstep cracked through the quiet like a gunshot. After a minute or two, I couldn't hold it back anymore. I broke into a jog, then a full run. My pack bounced hard against my back. My legs burned and my lungs started to ache, but I didn't slow down. I just wanted to get out of that stretch of trail, back to where the world sounded normal again. I don't know exactly how long I ran. It felt like forever, but it was probably only a few minutes. My mind had gone blank, except for the need to keep moving. Then, without any warning, the sound slammed back in. Birds started calling again. Insects buzzed. Wind moved through the leaves like it had never stopped. It hit me so suddenly, I almost tripped over my own feet. I skidded to a stop, hands on my knees, gasping for air, while the forest filled itself with noise around me. Everything sounded exactly the way it had before the silence started. Normal, peaceful even. I stood there for a long time, catching my breath and listening. Part of me tried to convince myself I had imagined the whole thing. Heat, tiredness, and overactive imagination. But I knew better. That feeling of being watched had been too real. I didn't camp that night. I turned the idea of pitching my tent into dust and kept walking straight back to the trailhead at a steady pace. I didn't stop until I was sitting in my car with the doors locked. My hands were still shaking when I put the key in the ignition. For weeks afterward, I couldn't even think about hiking alone. I stuck to short walks near town or went with friends. Eventually, I started telling myself it had been a weird, one-time thing. Maybe some local predator I never saw, or a strange weather pocket that made everything go quiet. The mind plays tricks when you're out there by yourself. A few months later, I decided to try again. Different county, different trail, same kind of quiet woods. I told myself I was being silly and needed to get back out there. The first hour and a half went fine. Birds overhead, insects in the brush, wind in the trees. I actually felt good, like I had moved past it. Then, without any warning at all, the sound disappeared again, exactly the same way. I decided to go for a solo hike that afternoon because I needed some time away from everything. No people, no noise, just me and the woods. I picked a quiet spot on the edge of a state forest in a county most folks don't talk about much. The trail looked barely used, which was exactly what I wanted. I had been walking for a few hours, enjoying the silence, when I first noticed something behind me. At first, it was just a soft crunch of leaves, the kind of sound you hear all the time out there. Maybe a squirrel or a bird rustling around. I didn't think much of it and kept going. The path had started to get narrower, the trees closing in tighter, and the light was fading quicker than I expected. I checked my watch and knew I should start heading back soon, but I figured I had a little more time. Then I heard it again. A step, heavier this time. It came a couple of seconds after mine. I slowed down without making it obvious and listened. Another step followed, steady and even. I told myself it was probably a deer. Animals move through the woods constantly. You just don't always notice them. But something felt wrong. The forest had gone completely quiet. No birds calling, no insects buzzing, nothing moving in the branches except whatever was behind me. I stopped walking. The sound stopped too. I stood there, counting slowly to 30 in my head. Nothing. I turned my head just enough to glance over my shoulder. The trail curved, and the trees were too thick to see very far. Everything looked empty. I almost convinced myself I was imagining things and started walking again. The steps started right back up, matching my pace. If I stepped over a root, it did the same a moment later. If I slowed, it slowed. It wasn't random noise anymore. It was following me exactly. That realization settled in my stomach like cold water. Whatever it was tracking me on purpose. I kept moving forward, trying to stay calm. Running felt like a bad idea. I didn't know what was back there, and bolting might just make things worse. So I stayed at the same steady pace and focused on the trail ahead. The path dipped into a softer patch of dirt where my shoes left clear prints. A few seconds later, I heard the same soft squish behind me. I stopped again, turned all the way around this time, and looked hard. Still nothing visible, just dense trees and shadows. I kept going, my attention sharpened on every little sound. The air felt too still, like even the wind had decided to hold its breath. Then, I reached another soft spot in the ground. I glanced down without meaning to. My footprints were there, plain as day. Right behind them, slightly to the side, was another set, much larger, wide prints with faint marks that looked like claws pressed into the dirt. The edges were still sharp, not crumbled at all. They hadn't been there when I walked through the first time. That meant it had stepped almost exactly where I had, only seconds later. My mouth went dry. I didn't turn around again. I didn't want to see it. Knowing those prints were fresh and following me was already too much. I picked up my pace just a little, still trying to keep control. My breathing sounded too loud in my own ears. I tried to quiet it, but I knew it didn't matter. Whatever was back there already knew exactly where I was. The steps came closer now, not rushing, not clumsy, just steady and deliberate, closing the distance bit by bit. It wasn't even trying to stay quiet anymore. That part bothered me the most. It didn't care that I could hear it. It wasn't afraid of me at all. The trail started to open up ahead. The trees thinned out, and I could see a patch of gray sky through the branches. The main path and the trailhead had to be close. I kept my eyes fixed on that lighter spot and pushed forward. The footsteps stayed right behind me, not speeding up, but never falling back either. Just there, patient. At one point, I heard it step on something solid, maybe a rock or thick root. The sound was heavy, much heavier than anything a normal animal would make. It sent a chill up my back, but I forced myself not to look. I just kept walking. The ground flattened out, and the trees spread apart. I could see more of the open area now. My car was parked just ahead, near the start of the trail. The steps behind me slowed down. Then, they stopped completely. I didn't stop or turn around until I reached the car. I opened the door, climbed in, and locked it before I finally looked back toward the woods. Nothing was there. Just the trees standing still and quiet like they had been all day. The forest looked completely normal again. I sat there for a long time with the engine running before I drove away. Later that evening, I stopped at the ranger station and told the guy on duty what happened. I described the sounds, the way it matched my steps, and the large prints in the soft dirt. He listened without saying much at first. Then he nodded slowly and told me that sometimes predators in these woods do exactly that. They follow for a while. They watch closely. They wait. And eventually, they decide when the right moment comes. I haven't gone back to that trail since. Some nights, when I'm trying to fall asleep, I still hear those steady steps in my head, always a few seconds behind mine. I wonder if it's still out there, waiting for the next person who wants a little silence in the woods.